pre-show banter for the 177 now. Wow, people that are logged in. I just saw you. What? It's been a week and no, gosh, I believe it was 3 years ago we saw each other. It feels like at least. But,
right?
Yeah.
Crisis time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When in fact, I believe it was only only 2 weeks. Right?
Yeah, the beginning of March, which feels so long ago now. There was it feels like that was like a distinctive point. And then like the Monday after that, it's just like, okay, the world is now changed.
Yeah. Yep.
But
I don't know if I told you or not, when we were there, like I actually like made the decision on the fly that I was not flying right from Nova. I drove 10 hours home.
oh no, I didn't know that.
I canceled, like, so right after we stopped talking, I like it had hit an inflection point, and I basically called the car rental company and had well, that morning I called the car rental company and had, you know, basically changed my rental to drop off in Augusta, because I was already up there in, you know, in the Northern Virginia area for or Columbia, Maryland for a thing. And I changed and canceled my flight because I'm like, I'm just not doing it. And since then I haven't been back out. Like that was the last time I was in public without a respirator.
Really? Yeah. So our conversation actually prompted me to do a little more prep, like personal prep. Like I thought, like, oh my gosh, what would happen if I could not go out for 2 weeks? What do I need?
Right.
And like a lot of what we talked about helped me like get a leg up on what I would need.
Well, then I'm glad we had that conversation. Although, and I guess now this is going to be widely public. But actually, you know what? Never mind. I'll DM you later. How about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I now realize, now that we're in pre-show banter, I'd better yes. Anyway, yeah. So, man, the attendee count is climbing rapidly, 300 plus now. All right. So
I was just gonna say, so John Strand just finished his keynote, and track 2 is now in their pre-show setup. So let's give people the extra 2 minutes, because as you can see, the numbers are climbing, and so happy to have all these attendees here.
Definitely. I'm like uber excited about this. And hey, for those that are like joining this and thinking like, hey, where is the original speaker who is supposed to be here? They have basically have an issue with basically had an issue, coronavirus related issue. And so there's had to sub somebody in, and the irony of that is not lost on me that we're having this conference in the first place because of that. And literally it just, I mean, yeah, I can't say enough about everybody that's here and everybody that helped put this together, and Alyssa, and, you know, for moderating, and just, I mean, this volunteer effort from the community to make this happen has just been phenomenal. Thank you, by the way, Alyssa, for being here to moderate, because wow.
Yeah, I'm happy. And all right, it seems like the numbers of folks coming in is getting a little steady. My clock is still reading 10:45 a.m. Eastern Standard. Just hit 10:45 Eastern Standard Time. So I know I'm personally really excited for this, and I don't want to delay it any further. So here's Jake Williams with his CTI and analysis pitfalls and paramedic lessons learned. So let's get ready.
Let's do this. Okay, so let me make sure that we are play and go. Can you see my screen still?
Yep.
Winning. Okay, well let's do this. Okay, so for those that don't know me, my name is Jake Williams, Malware Jake on Twitter. I own Rendition Information Security, Rendition InfoSec. Man, it's been one of those days. I actually was not slated to speak here originally, but was one of the helpers. I was actually moderating track 1, and we had an emergency this morning where a speaker had to drop out due to their own, well, you know, the whole reason that we're here in the first place, right? That we can't do an in-person con because of coronavirus. So here we are. You know, so I'll tell you, these are not my best slides ever, particularly for the paramedic part. Otherwise, we're just going to rock through this because that's it, right? So I want to walk through some of Kent's analytic doctrine. And I've given this talk longer form a couple of times before. I'll try to find a link for one of those later today. In fact, you can even see down here on the bottom, I had so little time, like the old copyright 2019 is on there, like just the whole like set, man, how bad, right? But let's talk about Kent's analytic doctrine, because it's a rockin', absolutely rockin' analysis platform or analysis paradigm, and there are so few people that actually follow this. And I'll tell you, it drives me nuts, because you know, if you worked in intelligence for any period of time, and for those that don't know, I did for 18 years as part of the intelligence community. And Kent's analytic doctrine is something that we that we do a lot with, right? It's something that you learn as an analyst, and some people don't know it by name, but they learn the analytic principles. And what I've seen in InfoSec as a broader community is that we are trying to reinvent the wheel on a consistent basis, right? Where we say, well, I mean, this is unprecedented. How many times have we heard the word unprecedented in the last couple of weeks, right? But we run into all these problems, right? We're like, well, how can we do this analysis? Because we've never had to do analysis like this before. And it turns out that Kent's analytic doctrine from World War II era, right? It turns out that it still applies. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Everything isn't new, right? So this doctrine has been taught to formal intelligence analysts for decades, right? Now, I'm not going to say that you have to use these analytic principles. What I will say is that the entire US intelligence community and many others around the world do. Now, if you come up with your own analytic principles, if you're like, screw Kent, right? First off, don't say that. But if you're like, hey, you know, Kent totally didn't know what he was doing, I can do better, right? One or two things is happening. Either you are a true visionary, and I can't discount that possibility, an infinite realm of possibilities, or you're doing it wrong, right? Now, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I can tell you where we'd be going, right? For whatever reason, a lot of folks, and I say that for whatever reason, I mean, I know the reason, right? A lot of the folks that are doing CTI, all of a sudden they get drugged into, and other InfoSec analysis in general, they basically have a lot of technical skills, but they're missing the analytic skills. And people get so mad when I say this, like, you're missing analytic skills. What are you saying about me? But listen, I mean, we can apply a model to this and make it go. And trust me, doing this will indeed make it go. So 9 steps to success, right? These are the 9 principles of Kent's analytic doctrine. I will absolutely make the slide deck available. In fact, I'll make the full slide deck available. I had to cut some stuff out of this because of time, but I'll make the full slide deck available after, basically after the presentation. These are the 9 steps to success. Screenshot this slide. If you take nothing else away from this, screenshot this, print it out, put it in your cubicle. Well, when you go back and have a cubicle. In the meantime, put it on your desk at the work from home and ask yourself consciously, are you doing these things, right? So number 1, focus on policymaker concerns, avoid a personal policy agenda, apply intellectual rigor, take conscious effort to avoid analytic biases. Consider outside judgments, right? This is a big one for us because everybody in InfoSec knows it all, right? And look, I'll tell you too, the longer you spend in InfoSec and the more experiences you have, the more likely it is that you're like, yeah, I've seen that, I've got that, right? But you have to really consider outside judgments because nobody is, basically it's the whole, all of us is smarter than one of us. No, sorry, one of us is, well, anyway, look, bottom line, I learned teaching SANS over a period of many years that collectively, the students in the room knew way more than I did, right? And on any given topic, there was someone in the room that could best me on a given topic. That's just the reality of it, right? And so you have to really consider those outside judgments. Systematic use of outside experts. This is a huge one. Collective responsibility for judgment, effective communication, and then candid admission of mistakes. Big one there because nobody likes to say, and I was wrong. Let's dive into some of these, right? I want to start out here by mentioning CTI has a credibility problem, right? I speak to a lot of executives. I do a lot of board briefings. I actually have one tomorrow, but remotely, of course. But there's a lot of reasons for this, right, as far as a credibility problem. But I'll tell you that using models are going to help alleviate this because it just will, right? You want to adopt and adhere to models that are going to remove these credibility problems. And the reality here is that models are going to help get consistency, and it's a show your work kind of thing. Because if you don't show your work and you just go to an executive and you say, here's what I think, or a decision maker, it doesn't have to be an executive, a manager, or a decision maker. We do analysis. We are in the business of decision support. We are providing folks with data to help them make a decision. And so when we then when we then have to provide that data, but we don't show our work, it is a reality that folks come back and they're like, well, you know, why do you think this? And the reality is too, they can find another analyst who thinks something different, right? And so I want to make sure that I can say, here's my work, here are the steps that I took, here's the model that I followed, and again, we'll get more consistent results with that. So let's talk about the doctrine. Right, number one, focus on policymaker concerns. This is tough, right? Because at the end of the day, every organization is funded by somebody. I'm going to give you a very unpopular piece of advice, and people argue with me all the time about this. InfoSec is a cost center. InfoSec has never saved an organization a single dollar. They only cost, InfoSec only costs the organization's money. Now listen, I know we can talk about cost avoidance and we can talk about, but listen, my friends, this is not how executives work. When they employ a safety program for cost avoidance, they don't then say, look at all the money we saved. And when you go in there and you start talking about like, hey, right, we're saving you money, right? That's a huge thing, right? Look, they immediately are losing credibility with them. And you have to come in and say and focus on specific concerns at the business unit level, right? All the way down to the BU, the business unit level, right? I always ask for feedback on my reporting. How can I make this product more valuable to you? Do not ask, for the love of goodness, do not ask, did you like this product? Avoidance of personal policy agenda. Listen, my friends, I can't do objective reporting on, I have a hard time doing objective reporting on incidents that have threat actors around Russia. Because you may or may not know, I kind of have a history there, and good old Russian intelligence there, and the shadow brokers folks, and all that. And look, I have a hard time writing about that. We know that, I recognize that, and I get other analysts to help QC my work or just do it in the first place, because I know specifically here I have a real personal policy agenda, and I know that I have a problem being objective here, right? So find your own personal policy spaces and either don't do that work or get other analysts, right? Diversify here, get other analysts on board to help you with that, but recognize and tell them, be honest with them and say, look, like, I can do analysis. I can do a lot of analysis, but this analysis, nah, that I can't be unbiased about this. And that's just a reality. And it's one that I wish wasn't the case. I would love to tell you, like, I can totally be that guy and I cannot run it, but you have to be honest with yourself, right? One of the ways you can do this, of course, is ask an unbiased reader to assess whether they think you've included any agenda points in your reporting. Now that unbiased reader, I have to tell you, may themselves have other biases, and they may be like, yeah, you totally are putting, kind of like the CNN versus Fox News thing, right? You know, where like, folks, look, if you're a big Fox person, you're like, well, CNN clearly is the, you know, whatever, they're clearly fake news, and vice versa, right? So you might have some personal policy agenda kind of thing without realizing it. That unbiased reader may. So just be really careful there. But this is a big one. Personal policy agenda absolutely destroys the credibility of your analysis. It destroys the credibility of your reporting. And the problem is that once you lose that credibility on something, it may be something small, when you go back and try and do something big, right? You've already lost that credibility, and that is not a win. It's just not a win at all, right? So intellectual rigor, CTI reports are going to rely on analysts to fill in missing information. And unfortunately, this creates a huge consistency gap in CTI analysis or analysis in general. I've never performed an analysis ever where I've had all the information. It doesn't happen. And I tell people regularly, if you don't like ambiguity, cyber threat intelligence is the wrong, and I mean the wrong profession for you. In general, analysis is probably the wrong profession for you because you are not going to have all of the data. You're never going to have all the data, and you still have to go in and fill that in. Now, when you do that, when you make assumptions, sometimes you're accused of making stuff up, right? And some folks accuse folks of that, right? Look, here's the deal. I always tell people, right? Always tell people when I've made assumptions and what those assumptions are. So there's a couple things here with intellectual rigor. First off, use models, use structured analytic techniques. Richard Hoyer on the psychology of intelligence analysis. It's phenomenal. Buy the book, right? You have time on your hands. Go get the book. Bottom line, huge one there. Use models. You will get more consistency. Give credit to others, right? But communicate the models that you're using. So I want to talk about conscious effort to avoid analytic biases. most CTI reports that I read today, they are chock full of analytic biases. Most CTI analysts are not trained in analytic biases. However, and this is critical, your executives are, because most of them have MBAs, and that's just a reality, right? At your executive directors and even a lot of mid-level managers, right? And the GMAT, the test that you take to get into an MBA program, it turns out that the GMAT actually has a section on analysis and argumentation, and this should surprise literally nobody that's watching this. What do you know? There's a whole section in that on analytic biases. So they've been trained on spotting them, and if you have not, you are probably putting them in your writing. Now, I have bad news for you. Even when you learn the analytic biases, it is really hard, as it turns out, to find them in your own writing. I know this because I train other people on detecting analytic biases, and I still end up with them in my own writing. And so what I need there is good peer review. I need to train my team on the analytic biases because I want my team to find them before I'm publishing a report, before I'm creating those talking points, that decision support to my executives and directors, right? So train your team. If you build up this big team around, this is a rising tide raises all ships kind of moment. Build that team up around you, right? And they are going to help you dramatically, right? And I see a question here where it says diversify your peer review. 1,000% diversify your peer review, right? Because that's going to be huge within this. But your peer review has to know what your executives know, and that's again the analytic biases side. We want them to be able to pick those out and be like, hey, you just use a straw man. There's a Texas sharpshooter. You're cherry picking data. This is, I mean, this is important. You need to be able to do that, right? So huge, huge, huge. And one of the ways that we do this is through doing peer review of published intelligence reports. Do a lunch and learn. Literally sit down. Everybody's got a copy of it. They come in over some pizza, and then you fire away and beat up on that report. Game on. Willingness to consider other judgments. You are not always right. I am not always right. Period. There are others on your team with different experience that may lead them to a different and even better conclusion. I have a quick story here, right? Quick story here about this woman that we hired out of FedEx. And I don't mean FedEx corporate, I mean FedEx Kinko's or now FedEx whatever drop and ship, FedEx office, I think. Holy goodness. So we end up doing this, like she was doing a bunch of shipping for us. She was awesome, like shipping for us, like when we went and dropped stuff off. And we realized she had great attention to detail, and we're like, hey, do you want to train to be a SOC analyst? And what do you know, she had already taken like 1 year of college and then dropped out and whatever, but around cybersecurity. And then all of a sudden we ended up with this problem, an incident with a logistics company. And what do you know, like all of a sudden she knows stuff that like we didn't, right? Because I don't work in logistics, right? But she had, and wow, mind blowing, like she was amazingly helpful, right? Now, I want to tell you though, that, you know, it takes a lot to come down and be like, hey, other judgments here. She's like, yeah, mind you, brand new SOC analyst, 3 months into the job, right? And she's kind of running point on not the forensic side of this incident, but like coordinating the incident, understanding like, you know, some of the what was at stake and just unique insights here. You have to be willing to consider other judgments, period, right? So getting through this, I want to come through to systematic use of outside experts, right? If you're awesome at CTI, someone else in your org is probably better than you at many technical topics, period. One of the best things about conferences, and we will eventually get back to in-person conferences, freaking network. If you see me at a conference and you see me in a talk, it is almost certainly because it's one of my friends that's giving the talk. You will not see me in talks generally, right? The vast majority of the time, you will see me in LobbyCon and you will see me networking with people. And there's a reason for this. I'm building up my Rolodex, right? And if you're one of these young guns who's like, what's a Rolodex? I mean my contact list, right? I'm building up that contact list so that I can phone a friend. So that when I run into a problem, I can pick up the phone, Twitter DM, email, exchange those business cards. It's absolutely huge. Build that network of experts out, right? I just cannot tell you enough what a big deal this is, right? Facilitate that easy access to outside experts, friend DA, whatever, right? But you need to facilitate that up front. If you have super, you know, like you want to make sure that you're not friend DAing something, then get some people NDA'd with you, right? This is build that Rolodex of experts that you can call. I'll tell you too that one of the ways that I fixed this in my own organization is that, you know, like when people think they're only going to get like a shout out, like or a bonus or whatever, if it's them that does something, then that's the individual wins. And I'm going to tell you, like when you start focusing on team wins, right? Like the whole team won kind of thing. That's when people stop worrying about the did I do it or did somebody else do it, right? Like whatever that piece of analysis is there. So that's a big one for me. Focus on the team wins. I mean, yes, give individuals credit by all means, but then you talk about like how the whole team came together. And again, it really takes some of the wind out of the sails, right? Where people would otherwise be, or sometimes otherwise are a little bit, yes. Anyway, collective responsibility for judgment. You may disagree behind closed doors about the analysis, but when the report gets issued, the whole team stands behind it, right? The whole team, period, stands behind it. When you can't reach a consensus, have the dissenting parties document their alternate opinion in writing, just like in our court system. Just like in our court system, dissenting opinion goes in writing. Put it in appendix, by all means. But, and this is absolutely key, you do not sharpshoot once the report gets released. You don't like, it's not one of those that's like, well, you know, I disagreed and no, it's the whole team stands behind it, right? I cannot tolerate that on teams. Once you've released the report, everybody's lockstep, right? That this was the collective judgment. Again, you may not have agreed with it, but it is the collective judgment, and that's the party line, right? Now, we're kind of seeing a little bit of that to the detriment. Obviously, you know, you hope that the judgments are good. We're seeing some of the must adhere to the party line being a detriment here in some of our, you know, some of what we're seeing in the world now, but rock on. Again, you don't play that game. Come to that judgment, collective responsibility for it, and again, walk down that party line. Again, you see here the fixing it, team wins, right? When you do team wins versus individual wins, that's it, right? That creates a big, you know, a big incentive to be, you know, to contribute to the team rather than trying to contribute to you. Communication, communication, communication. Your analysis is worthless if the audience can't understand what you're saying and how you reached your conclusion. Oh my gosh, if there's one thing you can do to really change the game here for you, it is put time into your executive summary and create one slider presentations. Illustrations help. You'll notice that a lot of my slides here have illustrations, right? Because I have a graphics artist on retainer, I subscribe to multiple services that help me go find these illustrations and stock art and all that, right? Put time into these, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words, and the executive summary is the only thing that most people read. And the vast majority of the time, it is way, 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 way too technical. Get a reviewer with similar experience to your audience, right? Find an executive, find a mid-level manager. Look, cyber is sexy right now. It just is, and people want to help out with it, and that's it, right? So find a reviewer. It's well worth, I mean, just well worth your time, right? So make that executive summary non-technical too. And the other thing I try to ask folks to do is I try to get them to back brief me, my reviewer. I try to get them to back brief me on like, what did you hear, right? Like, what did you take away from this? And I want to share a quick story with you where I got some IOCs from a gentleman many years ago, and I'm shaving the story way down. If you've heard the full version, it is way funnier, but just for time, I'll just tell you here that communication is a thing, right? Because I asked this GRC person for some indicators of compromise. He agreed to hand some over, and one of the indicators that he handed over was small kittens. And I have to tell you, when I looked at this indicator list, and they were all bad indicators, meaning they were all useless indicators, because he was GRC, I get that. I'm not judging governance risk compliance, by the way. Obviously, if I'm asking GRC for IOCs, right, we've reached the bottom of the barrel, right? And that's where we're at, right? Sometimes best bad plan wins. This is my best bad plan, and I got back small kittens, and it taught me a lot about communication. Because I asked him, well, first I asked my analyst sitting beside me, what do you think he means by small kittens? And he says, anyway, I don't know. All right, did he have a stroke? I'm like, I don't know. All right, so I go ask another analyst, what does he mean by small kittens? And the guy says, and I'll never forget this, my other analyst says, do you think he means Mimi cats? And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't think he means Mimi cats because he wrote small kittens. And then I started following the logic, and I think we're playing like Beautiful Mind Home Edition here, right? And straight up, I hit back to the guy, and I'm like, hey, did you mean Mimi cats? And he's like, yeah, mini cats, small kittens. Communication was lacking here, right? What happened was somebody briefed him and said Mimi cats, and he did not mentally understand what Mimi cats meant, but his brain did what our brains are tuned to do. And his brain said, word association. That sounded like miniature cats. And later, when he couldn't remember mini cats, his brain did other association and said small kittens for the win. And so we got small kittens, and small kittens were absolutely destroying the network. And I would pay good money to know what the mental picture was there. Obviously, it's never going to happen. But if you ask him, Did you understand what I said? He would say yes, because mentally he thought that small kittens, mini cats, were running around the network. Obviously, we did not convey here because it was too technical for the audience, right? Dump the techno jargon, get rid of it. And even when people think they're dumping the techno jargon, they're not. Get a reviewer with similar experience level, technical experience level to your intended audience. Let them review it. Let them tell you that you're good or not. You can't be the arbiter there, right? You can't be the arbiter of, will this person understand? And look, the worst thing that can possibly happen is you've communicated something, you think that they understood and they didn't understand, right? So, candid admission of mistakes. My friends, you will make mistakes. Coming back to earlier, analysis paralysis, and the fact that we have a lot of cases, right, where we have to operate with incomplete information, also known as all of the cases. We have to operate with incomplete information. Nobody likes to do that, but you have to, right? And there are times you're going to be wrong. You're just going to be wrong. And when that happens, you have got to turn around and the people that you gave decision support advice to, you have to go back and adjust that and say, listen, we made some assumptions here and they were wrong. We did the best we could with the information we had and we were wrong. And here's our new assessment. And I'm going to tell you, the first couple times you do that, generally my experience is you take a credibility hit with stakeholders. You just do. And that sucks. It's not fair, by the way. It's absolutely not fair, right? You did the best you could with the information you had. And intelligence analysts know this. And intelligence stakeholders know this. And in business, people totally don't track this. And it's okay, right? You're going to get over it. Trust me. And somebody put in chat here, mea culpa when needed. It's not even a mea culpa, right? It's a educating and making sure that people understand you are operating without, if you were clear in your communication in the first place, they already knew you made assumptions because you told them where the assumptions were at and you told them what they were based on, and that's all in your report. But then you come back and you're like, hey, these assumptions I made based on my best judgment, based on my analytic experience, they were still wrong. Foster a culture on your team where issuing a corrected report is not a big deal. It is way better. You are creating a better scenario, giving the updated decision support, right? Than you are letting them roll with bad and still thinking you're awesome, right? The first couple times you do it, I'm going to tell you, like, it's a hit. It absolutely is a credibility. It's a personal ego hit. It's a credibility hit within the organization. But I'm going to tell you that once somebody makes a judgment on your updated decision support, trust me, they will come back around. It's kind of one of those, like, you're coming up in credibility, and then it's like the first couple times you issue one of these, you're dropping in credibility, and then you skyrocket. Because people know, your leaders know that they can count on you to level set with them even when poop goes wrong, right? Okay, so real quick here, I'm going to close out this analysis portion with, if you only remember one thing, and I'm going to come back to this, come back to the slide up here for a second, right? The 9 steps to success, right? 1, 4, 6, and 9. Those are the big ones. If you can't do 9, and I get it, right? Start with 4. 1, 4, 6, and 9, right? Policymaker concerns, focus on what matters to them, not what matters to you. I don't write reports for me, right? I mean, if I could, that'd be great. I'd have more fun with it, right? 4, avoid the analytic biases. 6, use outside experts. You are not an expert in everything. I am not an expert in everything, right? Candid admission of mistakes, build that credibility, right? Because again, like, the worst thing that can happen is you're like, well, I don't want to look bad, so I'm not going to give them the updated assessment. And then somebody later, right, a week, a month, whatever later, makes a decision that impacts the business based on the old data that you have not amended, right? And just because you know something changed does not mean your stakeholders know that something changed there, right? You may be like, well, that's big news. I don't need to, like, let them know that. No, you absolutely do, right? This is, you know, again, it's field of view bias there, right? You're like, everyone must know what I know that got updated, and don't do that, right? On the effective communication, though, I'm going to tell you, I learned a lot from Colin Powell, and there's a couple of different versions of this this quote going around, but it's, tell me what you think, tell me what you know, but for God's sakes, always tell me which is which. And I just cannot be any heavier about that. You know, make sure that there's a clear distinction between what you think versus what you know, and make sure that your stakeholders understand which of those it is. So because PancakesCon is a 2-track or kind of a 2 whatever, you know, talk here, I'm actually going to go through some paramedic lessons learned. For those that don't know, that was actually my first job, right? So way back in the day. It turns out there are actually a lot of paramedics in security and incident response, EMT, firefighter, what have you. I can give you like a partial list of ones I know about. Matt Linton is an EMT. Matt Blaze is another EMT. Matt Blaze does a bunch with the voting stuff. Matt Linton's over at Google. There's a bunch of other, I mean, just like lists of folks that have been in first response, first responder, search and rescue, that kind of, those kind of scenarios. Like I even have the tattoo, you know, like the, yeah, for the good old paramedic days. And anyway, so paramedic lessons learned, right? This stuff, by the way, I threw together this morning because this was totally impromptu, that I was going to give a talk this morning, and rock on, game on, we're here. But lesson learned number 1, your personal safety matters most. You cannot help a patient or anybody else for that matter if you get hurt yourself. And these are life lessons, by the way. I want to clarify too, while I'm going to talk in the context of paramedic, you know, an emergency response and the whole, in crisis response, this stuff applies unilaterally, right? So your personal safety matters most. You have to stay in the game. And so, you know, the way I transition this to incident response is get sleep, right? Because if you don't sleep and if you fall out of the game, if you're so critical that you can't go home, that you got to work 23 hours a day, right? By the way, it drives me nuts every time they have a White House press briefing over the last couple of weeks. He's working 24 hours a day. He's getting like no sleep. And I'm like, God, please get sleep. You need sleep, right? Kind of thing. Bottom line, your personal safety matters most, right? You can't help a patient if you get hurt yourself, and you sure can't help the next patient and the next one and the next one. And you're consuming more emergency resources if you get hurt yourself. Not only are you taking yourself out of the game, right? Somebody that has to care for you too, right? You have to use personal safety first. And I'm going to share a story here that I don't think I've ever shared publicly before, but I'm going to anyway. My mom used to be a paramedic as well. Well, she was a cardiac tech. Virginia, that's an EMTI for those that you know, are outside of Virginia and know Virginia's got a weird licensing model. Anyway, but we used to roll together in the Buchanan Emergency Rescue Squad there, Buchanan EMS, and we rolled out. And my mom has 3 boys. I'm the oldest of 3, and she's got a soft spot for boys. And this kid took his car out, and his parents were actually gone, basically driving down to Greensboro to buy him a car and bring it back for him. And he took their car out on one of these windy roads, wasn't, you know, speeding around on his 16th birthday, wasn't wearing a seatbelt, or may not have been exactly his birthday, whatever, but like wasn't wearing a seatbelt, gets ejected from the vehicle. Swerves to miss a deer, hits the bank, gets ejected from the vehicle, and he's pinned, or at least partially pinned, under the vehicle. And I rolled the crash truck. My mom rolled the ambulance. Actually, with one of my brothers, who's also an EMT. It was the last call I ever ran with my mom. I just said I can't ever run a call with you again, because I put an airbag. If you're not familiar with these basically help you lift a vehicle, or can lift, move, whatever. They are very powerful airbags. So the compressor air power is phenomenal. And put an airbag, and I had unpinned the person, but you need cribbing, right? Because that airbag can pop, the compressor can, the valve, there's all kinds of stuff that could go wrong. And so every crash truck has cribbing with it. And cribbing is basically lots of lumber that you use to go pin stuff and you know, get stuff in place. And she literally like dove into this ditch and dragged this kid back out from under without, and I'm horrified. I mean, I just was horrified. And I then, realizing this kid needed airlift because we're an hour from, I mean, almost an hour from the hospital, 45 minutes from a hospital at that point. I moved to the local high school. Like I redeployed to the high school and set up the landing zone for the life flight, and all that. Got them, you know, coming in, and my mom, you know, rolls in afterwards, and just, I mean, the kid died the next day anyway. There was not, realistically, I think we kind of knew that was going to be the case, just based on, you know, his condition. But I told her then, and we never ran a call together again, because I can't. I mean, like this is always important, but when it's family, it's critical important, right? So your personal safety matters the most. Always be calm, even when you don't want to be. Always be calm, right? And this is something that I'm having to practice with my kid right now. you know, is the be calm even when you don't want to be. Put a brave face on stuff even when you don't want, you know, even when you don't want to. When you freak out, so do your patients, right? If you've got kids, if you've got significant others, if you've got whatever it is around you, right? You've got to be calm, right? You just have to be, right? Put that brave face on stuff. Go in the toilet, you know, go in the bathroom, turn on the fans so nobody here, run some water, and fucking bawl, right? Language, sorry, freaking bawl. By all means, right? And look, that's fine. That's okay, right? Even when you feel like freaking out, though, don't. Put a brave face on it and go do that another time, right? That's just the reality of how it works, right? So when you freak out, so do the people around you. They are going to read your body language. They're going to read what you're doing, the way you're acting. You gotta do it, right? So anyway, it's never as bad as it looks, right? This is another big one for me. It's never as bad as it looks. Okay, sometimes it actually is, right? I have countless like gore, horror, whatever stories, you know, here, but I'm just going to tell you, like, you can't let the patient know that, right? So even, you know, and again, this kind of pivots off of number 2, always remain calm, right? But the reality is you are gonna have time to decompress later. You know, this too shall pass. You just put one foot in front of the other and you keep right on moving, and that's just it, right? Put one foot in front of the other, keep on moving. I'll tell you that my military experience really helped with that. You know, I can tell you for sure I know exactly where my breaking point is, because they took me right to it, intentionally so, right? There are folks in different programs that the whole purpose of the program is to push you farther than you believe is possible. And I'll just say, you know, know where your breaking point is at, or at least know where if you don't know where break is, at least know where the furthest you've ever been is, right? And just be ready to roll to that, and use that as an anchor. Be like, yep, this sucks, but it wasn't as bad as that, right? Yep, this is bad, but it wasn't as bad as that story I heard this other time. Yep, this is bad, but it wasn't as bad as, and keep right on rolling, right? Because again, no matter how bad it looks now, it's just not as bad as it looks, right? Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, do your thing, and decompress later. And this one's important, right? This I think, and this is the last slide that I've got here, and I might kick a couple of stories here if I've got time, or answer questions or whatever. So, by the way, somebody mentioned that they're not seeing slides only. My slides are showing, right? Just to confirm here, Alyssa, can you confirm my slides are showing? Because I see somebody saying they only see a webcam. Okay, confirm, rock on. Okay, I'm looking in questions, and I was like, oh no, kind of. If I've been going this whole time and I don't have slides, what's going on? Okay, cool. So full screen there, that may be the issue. So lesson learned number 4 is it's okay to not be okay, right? I posted this on Twitter yesterday. I'm just going to throw out here, I was not okay yesterday, and I may be better today, right? We'll see. But it's okay to be not okay, right? You know, there are times you're going to see and experience stuff, and I think that, you know, certainly as a paramedic, I saw and experienced stuff that I'm just going to, you know, say nobody should have to see, and endure things that nobody should have to endure, right? And over time, it eats away at everybody. And there are people in here who are like manly men, and like, oh, not me, kind of thing. And I'm going to tell you too, I was that guy. I was absolutely that guy. I'm like, I will never, you know, like it doesn't matter, right? Like people dying doesn't matter, right? You know, yeah. Anyway. And it eats away at you over time, right? Decompress, find somebody to talk to, be open about your feelings, right? And just be like, yeah, this is hurting me, man. You know, I mean, just reality, right? Reality wise, it's gonna, you know, I think just the reality is that before this is all over, you know, I mean, I think we're all gonna know somebody, and that you know, that didn't come through. And I'll say, you know, I'm seeing in the chat here, former LEO had to do CPR on a 4-year-old, didn't help, right? Yeah, no, that sucks. It sucks, brother. I'm here, right? Yes. You know, I had a question for my kid, you know, a few months back, and she's like, hey, have you ever done, because they were talking about CPR and you know, CPR on the Heimlich maneuver at school and all that. And she's like, did you ever have to do CPR on anybody? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, how many times? I'm like, I lost count, right? Like I just lost count. She's like, how many of them made it? I'm like, not as many as died, right? I mean, just reality, right? And you know, that's crappy, right? And it kids, it's horrible with kids. It's horrible with people that have, that have families. It's just, it's bad, right? But the reality is it's okay to be not okay. Find someone to talk to today, right? And that probably is a great spot for me to kind of, to kind of close out with and just say, like, if you're okay today and you're like, yeah, I don't need this, right? You do, you totally do. I was that guy, right? And maybe this is life lessons, but like, I was certified as an EMT at 16, paramedic at 18, and I thought, because your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed there, right? I was like, oh yeah, not me. That's stuff other people need, right? To talk to a counselor, right? That other people need to, you get it today. Find that support network today before you need it, right? Because when you need it, and I speak from experience here, because I didn't find one until I needed it, and I was so far overboard with needing it that I was in a pretty dark place, and everything that I'd bottled up, right, just hit at once, and that's not where you want to be, right? And so, find somebody to talk to. Know that it's okay not to be okay. I know earlier I was like, put a brave face on things, and that's for family, that's for patient, that's for, right? Your family, by the way, probably is not who you want to use as the support network. I'm just going to throw that out there, right? Because that's where the brave face needs to be. My personal opinion, right? But find that support network where there's somebody you can talk to and just be like, yeah, dude, I need to chat. I need to vent. I need to get this out, whatever, right? So anyway, look, this conclusion slide obviously doesn't include any of the paramedic stuff. It's don't reinvent the wheel with CTI analysis, because we talk about CTI and intelligence analysis. CTI analysts can make the same use of cancer analytic doctrine that traditional CTI or traditional intelligence analysts have for decades. And adopting 9 or even just 4, right, of those steps in the doctrine are going to help CTI teams perform with more consistent analysis. Those top 4, again, were basically focus on policymaker concerns, right? That was number 1. Number 4 is the avoid conscious avoidance of analytic biases. Number 6 was systematic use of outside experts, and number 9 was the mea culpa, right, or the more appropriately, the candid admission of mistakes. Let people know when you've made a mistake, and again, typically it's not your fault, right? If you've done good analysis, if you've applied the models correctly, it's not your fault. It's just the lay of the land. It's the way this stuff works, right? So I'll say one more, less, as far as like the, put a brave face or always be calm. I mentioned that one of my brothers was also an EMT, and I thankfully was not running this call with my mom. I cannot even imagine. And one of my other brothers is an EMT, and I got a call, and we dispatched. It was for a rollover vehicle accident, and as I'm driving up, I'm like, man, that is, and I remember saying, I totally remember saying the words, that is up, right? Like to the I was driving, I was the advanced life support person on the truck, so I was driving there knowing that I was not going to drive to the hospital. I would be in the back of the truck, and I remember saying, man, that is effed up. I pity the person who's, and as we roll up further, I look at the car, I'm like, man, that's a Dodge Neon. I'm like, man, that's the same kind of car my brother has. And then I realized that's my brother's car. And he was involved in a rollover MVA, motor vehicle accident, and mind you, he's an EMT, and he knows how bad this is. And this is, I mean, he knew how bad it was. And I mean, he made it okay, and he's all good. But yeah, I will tell you that I decompressed later, right? But like, especially with him knowing how bad it was everything I could do to stay calm, and roll through that. So but I'm telling you, like, he came back after the fact, and he's like, dude, he's like, I thought I was gonna die, and he's like, and I may well have, and he's like, I cannot thank you enough for literally just saying thank you for, he's so like, thank you for, just being calm about stuff. And yeah, because again, this stuff happens, and again, we're gonna have to be there for people that we know and love and all that. So anyway, so that's it. My time's kind of expired here. Alyssa, are we going to do questions, or do you want to bounce to the next presenter here, or how do you want to play this? I'll do questions when the next presenter shows up.
Yep. So I'm checking through the questions, and I think from the only one is folks were wondering if rendition security, rendition infosec is hiring.
Well, we are. How about at the moment we're cautious because we don't know what's happening with the economy right now. But we're still closing. Me and John Strand were talking about this in pre-show. We're all still closing work. I guess the short of it is, by all means, submit a resume. But I just to be straight up honest, I don't think I'm pulling the trigger on the majority of folks we have in the pipeline now. The majority of folks we have in the pipeline. I see a question that just came in. Can you give an example of an analytical model or an analytic model? And yeah, totally. Yeah, somebody asked about group chat. How do you make the group chat visible? Get on Slack. That's where to be to see everybody's questions. Only the organizers can see the questions. It's a weird setup with GoToWebinar. So anyway, can I give an example of an analytic model? Yeah, totally. I mentioned Richard Hoyer has the psychology of intelligence analysis, right? So definitely that's a big one. And here, because you just can't make this up, I'm like looking at this book. This is another outstanding one from Clark, right? Like it's actually sitting on my desk, right? Like, and you can see kind of well worn in the there, but well, like so well worn that it's like tearing on the cover. But target-centric approach to intelligence analysis has a lot of models. I wouldn't start with this one. I really like Hoyer's books better because it breaks it down into what they call SATs, or structured analytic techniques, right? You have to use them all. One of them that's a great, that's such a great one here is, or I think is a great one, is ACH. I mentioned in the slides. That's analysis of competing hypotheses. It's a little bit longer, but I also like decision matrices. That's another one covered, another structured analytic technique. Yeah, those are all good examples of analytic models. And by the way, applying Kant's analytic doctrine itself is a model, right? If you say these are 9 things that we consciously do, right, 9 steps that we take, not necessarily steps that we take, but all of our analysis adheres to these principles, that's a model, right? So that's what I mean when I talk about models, right? So anyway, is our next speaker here?
Yep, the next speaker is here. So thank you very much, Jake. I know that was personally enriching for myself, and I'm actually planning on reviewing the talks and sending it to multiple people. So really appreciate it.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for doing this, Alyssa, and being out here. Really, really appreciate it. So I will, yeah, I'm seeing some questions about write a list of books for beginners or the slides. Get in Slack. I will absolutely have this in Slack, right? So again, thanks to everybody. Peace out. I'm going to jump back in and help moderate track 1 again, as I was originally planning to do. So thank you much.
All right.